Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr here today, and I am sharing this thank you window shaker card featuring lots of fun stamps and dies from Simon Says Stamp. Many of these components come from the February 2020 Simon Says Stamp card kit. The card kit is sold out, but you can buy any of the things I'm sharing here today individually. And some of them you might already have on hand. From the Simon Says Stamp Window Frames 6x8 stamp set, I'm going to take the floral frame and stamp it on some Bristol Smooth cardstock using Ink on 3 No Line Coloring Fade Out ink. This is going to give me a really nice outline that I can then color in with some Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers for a no line coloring outline look. This is one of my favorite looks to achieve, and I think it really makes this beautiful floral frame pop. The coloring definitely is the most time-consuming part of this card. However, I think it comes together fairly quickly as I have really limited the number of colors that I'm using for this design. I found it easiest to start with one image and then just kind of work my way around. Instead of coloring all of the large roses or those large florals first, I would just color one image, move on to the next one, move on to the next one. There are a few places where I would color multiple leaves at once and then move on, but I found it really easy, and that way I'm not missing any little piece or area. So you're going to see that I've colored in one of the flowers and then the leaves, and then I'm just going to kind of keep working my way around. Now, one of the things that made this so easy was that I used, I believe, a total of 5 color markers and a blender. So 6 markers total, that's it. I am using a deep red and pale rose for my large roses, wine red for those little berries, mid green and olive green, and a blender for the leaves, and then some combination of those greens for stems, usually the lighter green, the olive green for the stems, and then just a little blender here and there. Pretty much on everything I use the blender kind of as my third color. So I'm going to work my way around my frame. I did decide that I thought it would be easiest to take my window trio die from Simon Says Stamp and cut that out so that I knew right kind of where I was supposed to be coloring, and I'm going to use those windows as a component in my card design. I'm going to continue coloring all the way around. I did leave in a lot of the coloring today. I've sped it up, but I left it in just to show how much fun this is to create. And hopefully this inspires you to try some no-line coloring as well, no matter what coloring medium you use. I find the zigs, I get great results with them, and I'm really comfortable with them, so I use them a lot. I need to probably branch out a little bit and try some other markers. I just ordered some new markers, so I'm excited to try those out, and as soon as I have, and like them, I will share that here, so stay tuned for that coming soon, probably in February. Give me a little time to try those out once they get here. I also love no-line coloring with the Polychromos colored pencils. I have tried it with Copics, and I'm just not very proficient with that yet, but I will keep trying and seeing if I can get there eventually with those. Now that I'm about done, you might notice that I used that right edge, or one of the edges of my paper as the scrap to clean off the tips of my markers. I'm actually going to trim down this panel to pretty thin and mount it on my card base. And that background card base is going to have some special stuff going on as well. So let's finish coloring all of this in, and then in addition to the beautiful frame, you might think, in the finished card I showed at the beginning of the video, there's a lot more leaves and things than what is shown here. That's because in this window frames stamp set, there are additional images. So once I trimmed this down, I actually took some of those individual leaves and then the little berries and things and stamped them around the edge of my panel. This is just going to fill it in and really make it so much more interesting. And kind of eliminate a lot of that white space. So I'm just simply going to use those 3 extra images, and in fact there are extra images for each window frame in this stamp set. So for example, I'm using the florals today, so I use the leaves and things. There is also hearts, and then there's extra hearts, and then there's balloons, and there are extra individual balloons and confetti and things for that. So each of the main frame images in the window frames stamp set comes with some complementary or accessory images, which makes really filling in or adding extra little pieces here and there so easy. I didn't fill in the entire perimeter of this, but I did try to stamp kind of somewhere all the way around to add that extra interest and to really just fill it all in, like I said. So once I have this all colored in, and again, we're just going to use those same colors of markers for all of these extra individual little pieces, I am going to set this aside for a second to work on the background. And I knew that I wanted to do something kind of special with the background, even though this panel is still fairly wide. I think it might be almost 3¼ inches wide and then 5½ inches tall. But I still wanted the edges, because I want to center this in my card base. I want the edges to have something going on and have some interest and some color. With this being white, I really felt like my background needed to have a little color. So you're going to see that I'm going to use some dark green cardstock. It's actually some Hero Hues Palm cardstock that has been trimmed to 4¼ by 5½ inches. And we are going to double stamp that background with 2 different background stamps from Simon Says Stamp. Kind of do some background stamp layering to really make an interesting background. And I know I've mentioned this before in recent videos that I absolutely love text stamps for adding just a great little touch. And my favorite new background stamp from Simon Says Stamp is the UR background stamp set, which is a fantastic text. And I am going to be using that with one of my other favorite background stamps that's been out for a while called the Leaves background. So we're going to take our Hero Hues Palm cardstock and the Leaves background first. And I am going to stamp a tone-on-tone design. Now this alone would have been fine. I definitely went with this leaf design or leaves design because I felt like it coordinated with the colored image I just colored. And I'm going to ink this up with the Pinkfresh Studio Olive ink. And I did it twice just to make sure I got really good coverage. I'm not so worried about the center portion of this, since a lot of that will be covered up and you're only going to see peaks of it through the windows of our frame or the window frames. But I want to make sure, especially along the sides, that it's complete coverage. So I did stamp that twice. Then I'm going to clean my Leaves background stamp, remove that from my MISTI, and we are going to take the UR background stamp and some white pigment ink and stamp that over our leaf design for this layered background stamping. And I love a white pigment ink for this. If you want it even more muted, you could do 2nd generation stamping and that'll make it a little bit lighter. I went ahead and just did the 1st generation for this card. But look how gorgeous this is. I almost wanted to use this panel just as it was because I loved it so much. Okay, we have the main components for our card. We're kind of ready to start tying it all together. The first thing I'm going to do is take some double-sided score tape along the back of our window frames panel, and we're just going to frame this up. And then I did off camera trim a piece of Hero Arts acetate to fit behind this. This is going to be the window of our shaker. If you don't have any more of the My Favorite Things shaker pouches that fit this die design, and you want to create a different kind of shaker, like I'm creating a flat shaker here, then you can just back this with acetate. Just another way to use the window. In my card I did for the Simon Says Stamp YouTube channel, I used the shaker pouches and filled those little wells with shaker material. So this is just a different way. Now I want to stamp directly on the acetate windows with my sentiment, and I'm going to use the thank you sentiment from the Window Frames stamp set, and I'm going to stamp thank you in each of the windows, and then we're going to stamp and emboss another little phrase on a banner to finish it off, so it's thank you, thank you, thank you so very much. And I love a white stamped sentiment on an acetate window. I think it's so showy and pretty. I did have to re-ink my Stazon ink pad as it was really, really dry. And so I re-inked that and had to be a little careful with my stamping so I didn't make it too messy. In fact, that first stamped image was kind of messy. I will tell you, I'd already adhered the acetate. I didn't want to remove it, nor did I really want to waste the acetate. You can always take a little Ultra Clean cleaner and carefully wipe that away. So that's what I used to clean up the Stazon. I just dabbed it onto the acetate window and removed it and then re-stamped it. It's almost a great eraser. So there's just a little tip for you. If you're using Stazon and maybe you don't get something stamped exactly right, you usually can remove it with the Ultra Clean cleaner. I'm going to move the word thank you down and stamp each of those windows like I'm showing here. It's hard to tell on the white on white, but once we layer this over our sequin shaker material and our dark green background, it just looks really nice. And again, I'm using the Ultra Clean cleaner in between each to make sure it's nice and clean before I move it. And I'm trying to I'm eyeballing it, but centering it as much as I can in the center of each of those windows. A Misty or another stamp positioner tool is going to make this so much easier. Now, once I have the stamping done, I am ready to add some fun decorative borders along each side. I wanted to pull in a little bit more of that pink or rose color, and then we can add our foam adhesive to pop this up. I'm going to use the Simon Says Stamp Scallop Stitches die. This is the medium one, I believe. Let me double check really quick. Yes. I used the medium-sized one, and I'm just going to cut two thin borders that I can adhere with double-sided score tape along each long side of my floral window frame colored background. And it has a great little stitching detail in the scallop. This is one of my very favorite die basics from Simon Says Stamp. It can be used in so many ways. I've used it over and over again because I just really love this die design. We'll die cut the other one, and then again, we're just going to adhere those along each long side. And I love a good double-sided tape. This score tape works perfectly for that. And we want to adhere it just so that you can see the stitching detail right to the side there. And that draws out a little bit more of the pink with all that green we have going on in the background. We're going to flip our panel over and back it with one layer of foam adhesive. I will tell you I used only one layer, which is going to make the sequins not move as much. If you want the sequins to have more movement, I would recommend doubling the foam tape. I didn't want mine to be too thick today, and I didn't mind that they didn't move a whole lot for this particular card design. You want to make sure the foam tape is butting up right next to each other so that the sequins don't fall out or come out of the design. And then to adhere this, since it's not the same size as the background that we're going to place it on. To do this, I am actually going to put this in my MISTI upside down after I have filled the well with sequins. And I'm just checking it here. I actually haven't removed the backing paper. I want to make sure that I like how it looks, and I think that's going to be fine. But a MISTI can be a great tool not only for stamping your images and making sure you can stamp them exactly where you want them to go, but you can also line up things easily. Now, I didn't quite get mine lined up correctly the first time, and I decided to leave that in the video so you could see how I fix that without actually having to restamp or redo anything. So let's grab our MISTI, open it up. Just going to remove the magnets here. And then I'm going to position the panel upside down. We're going to remove the backing paper from our foam tape. And then we can take our background and tip it upside down and line it up. Now the key is to make sure that your background is exactly where you want it to go. And I thought it was, but you're going to see when I flip this over that one side is so much wider, the right side, than the other. And that just really bothered me. Sometimes I like that look, but for this I did not. So I'm going to use some Undo adhesive remover. And I'm going to just run that along the back of my panel where that adhesive is, and very, very carefully peel this up. I don't want to rip it, and it's going to pop up. I'm going to let that dry real quick. And then to ensure that I get it in the right place the next time, I have another background panel, the exact same size as my stamped one, that I'm going to put underneath, which is going to give me a little bit better visual aid to make sure that I have this right where I want it to go. So let's put that in the MISTI, then we're going to put in our border, and then we can pop our background in place. And when I flip it over this time, so much better. There, it's lined up perfect. We have our great little shaker. I can then attach this to a white top fold card base. Now we still need to finish our sentiment. I'm going to stamp So Very Much from the Window Frames stamp set on a scrap of palm cardstock using clear embossing ink and heat embossing with white embossing powder. I'll die cut that with a Simon Says Stamp Nested Banners die and adhere it with foam adhesive right there along the bottom edge of the card. The final step to finish this card design is I'm going to take some cute little sweethearts embellishments in white and add them to the end of each thank you sentiment. Using the glue tube and a crystal katana, I'm going to pick up the heart, add a little dab of glue, and then glue that heart in place. Fun little embellishment that just kind of balances out that thank you in each window. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this thank you window shaker card featuring Simon Says Stamps and Dies. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Simon Says Stamps and Dies that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel so you never miss a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.